Good morning and welcome again to the third in our series of Literacy Unlocked. Welcome back, it's wonderful to see you all again today. And today's session is going to be on Are You Listening? So it's all about listening skills. So let's have a look what we did in the last two sessions. The first one, in the first week, we looked at learning, which was to know and to do. Facilitators for learning. Did you remember the three things that help children to learn, help you to learn as well? They were building on what we already know. Relevance. If something's relevant to you, you're more likely to take an interest in it. And motivation. Is something motivational for you and children to learn? And then second week, we looked at cognitive indicators for literacy. So the indicators for literacy came from this diagram, and they're all research-based, and these are what researchers have found to be present in children who are good at literacy. And children who struggle often have a lot of these missing. So we looked at 5 indicators for brain skills. So you need your brain to be working before everything else. So these were comprehension, attention, paying attention. This is very much linked with listening, today's topic. Sequencing and prediction. So learning about sequence and what comes next. Automaticity, being able to do things automatically. Once you can do something automatically, your brain doesn't focus on it anymore. It focuses on the next thing. And then the final one was memory. We need a good memory to remember what happened, what we've learned before, so we can then build the next thing on. We also had a look at visual skills and how important they are to literacy. So I've got a little question here. It was sort of a question to myself. What are your expectations of this session? And I thought to myself, well, the people attending will want it to build on what they already know. So build on last week, which it does. It needs to be relevant. So it's your parents, it's about your children, it's relevant to you. And hopefully it's motivational. We've got songs and rhymes in here and activities to do and lots to learn. So it should be motivational. As always, I just want to add a little bit extra in here. And I want you to think about the importance of the early years. This is 0 to 7, 0 to 8 years identified as early years. And this is when the brain is at its most active, when it's learning the most. And this is the time when children learn to read. If they don't learn to read and write by the time they're 7 or 8, they are not able to then read to learn. It's a very, very important time. And children need to establish all these skills and knowledge and experience to enable them to learn to read and write. These things have to be in place before we start the formal process of teaching about letters. I keep repeating that to you every week. I hope it's getting through. Also, I wrote here links. The fact that we're doing listening skills today, but as I've already mentioned, they link to focus and attention. If you're not paying attention, then are you listening? These things are all related. They all have to come together. And then I found a little quote that I'd like to share with you. And it's, I believe this as well, that it's very important that you can see problems early on, and you need to identify them and see what you can do about them. This is a little quote from the Dyslexia Society. And it says, it takes 4 times as many resources to help a student to resolve a literacy problem in year 4 than it does in year 1. Early identification of reading difficulties is important, but I think we should look even earlier than that. Before children have these difficulties, see if they have difficulties with any of these other indicators that are on the diagram. Just a thought for you there. So for today, we're going to look at the difference between listening and hearing. Are they the same? Define a little phrase here, speech in noise. This is something identified by researchers as being important. The reception and perception of sound, here, how we receive sound and how we perceive it. The next one, we're going to look at investigate how we discriminate sounds, how we tell the difference between sounds. This is something children need to be able to do, to tell the difference between sounds in our language so that they can relate those to the right letters or groups of letters. And then, of course, we'll do activities to help to promote listening skills. So I thought you might like this little picture here. It says, I can look directly at someone, nod when they're talking, maybe even throw in a yeah, and still not hear a single word they said. So notice the word hear has been used. Does it actually mean listening? Or does it mean hearing? Let's have a look. So hearing or listening. Hearing is to perceive sound. I've got here through the ear. Can you hear something? If a child has a problem with hearing, then they need to go and see a doctor and see what the problem is. And it's usually a problem with the ears. A lot of children have what's called glue ear, and some need grommets fitting to help them to be able to hear properly. You can often tell if a child is not hearing properly because they won't be speaking the words correctly. They might miss the beginning sounds of words. So they're listening and they can hear, but they miss that first bit of sound because they're not hearing very well. We've also got active listening and passive listening. So passive listening is sort of you hear something, but maybe you're not really focusing. So when we want children to listen, we want them to actually focus on what we're saying. So please listen to what I'm telling you. So active listening could be ignoring distractions. Stop playing with your toy on. So I'm trying to tell you something. Focus is on what is being said. Maintain eye contact. It doesn't always mean that someone's listening just because they're looking. See the quote. Smiling, nodding, engaging. So if somebody is replying and saying, oh yes, or asking a question when you're talking, chances are they're listening. You can notice then that they're listening. And listening for details. Here's an example of what happens to me sometimes when I think I'm listening and I'm hearing, but clearly I'm not listening very well. So I might be doing something or talking, and I'm also making a cup of tea for someone, and I say to them, how many sugars? And they say 2. And then I'm still speaking, making the cup of tea. I haven't actually, although I may have heard they've made a sound, but I've not actually focused on how many sugars did they say they wanted? And I have to ask again. It's a bit like someone has just told you their name and then somehow you instantly manage to forget it because you didn't actually listen and focus on what the person was saying. It's embarrassing, isn't it? Maybe you've done that too. Another example is I can hear music playing. Quite often in the background, I have music playing, but I'm not actually listening to it. I'm doing something else. So have I zoned out? I can hear it. I know it's there. But if somebody asks me about it, or even what was it that was just playing? What was the song? Who sang it? I don't know. I wasn't actually listening. So hearing and listening are quite different. The term listening can also be divided into these 3 here. We can have focused listening, which is when someone focuses on the sound quality. How well can we hear something? Is it a little bit blurred? Or is it a really strong sound? We're looking at the quality of the sound, listening to the quality of the sound. Or causal, what is causing the sound? Where does that sound come from? What is the source of the sound? So we might say, oh, we can hear something. What is it? Oh, it's someone shouting. So we're actually concentrating on where the sound has come from and not actually the sound itself. And then we have semantic listening. So we're listening to work out a meaning, some meaning from this sound that we're listening to. So I'm going to go away just for a very, very short time. And I'd like you to list what you see if you look at children and you think they're not listening. What is it they're doing? How do you know that they're not listening? Okay, could you write some things down? Okay, I'll go away a couple of seconds. Okay, so I wonder what you wrote down. So to me, if children aren't listening, and I'm looking maybe at a group of children, because I work with children as a teacher sometimes, or as an observer in a class, and if I see that children are not listening, it's usually their gaze is not focused on the teacher, or they're maybe playing with something, not looking at the teacher, looking out the window, looking as though they're not listening. There's no focus, there's no eye contact being maintained, they're not engaging. These things that I've put at the top here, maybe you have some different observations. It's just something to think about. And then there's this next one is about speech in noise. Now then, do you like my little picture here? This is a teacher and her class there, KG3. So they're aged 5 to 6. And they were doing a very, very good song for listening, which is about waiting for a bus. So they're actually on the bus now. This is why they're sitting in a line. And the little boy at the front here has a bus. And the children stand in different places. They go and pretend bus stops. And then when you sing their name, so they have to listen very carefully because they're waiting to hear their name. When you call their name, they come and sit on the bus. So you can have a bus driver, you can have a conductor at the back, whichever. You can make a steering wheel, have a little plate or something, and the person at the front drives the bus. If you have more than one child, if you've only one child at home, it's a little difficult. So you could sing, I went for a ride on a bus today, and who do you think I saw? Jamie. And on he got, and off we went, bumpety, 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 bump. And they sit on the bus, and who do you think we saw? Jenny. And then she comes and jumps on the bus, sits down, and on she got, and off we went, bumpety, 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 bump. And then you carry on singing until you've got all your children, however many you might have. And then at the end, bumpety, 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 bump. And then, of course, you can talk about journeys. Where is your bus going to go to? Where would the children like to go? It's really good for listening because the children stand and they're waiting for their name. So they listen quite intently. It's a good song for listening there. So speech in noise, we're talking about this maybe in a classroom, or when you take children to a play area, there's lots of noise, lots of children going on. Lots of children playing, and so lots of activity going on, children are noisy. Sometimes it's quite difficult for children to hear what is being said and to focus on what's being said in that noise. So something important when children go to school, they need to be able to do that in the playground, often in classrooms when there's lots of activities going on. And there's some research here related to speech in noise. The first is just about children who do musical activities. So some researchers in Finland took a group of 2 and 3-year-olds, and they tested 2 and 3-year-olds who did musical activities. They have little music groups, which they call music schools, that preschool children can go to. And the children who go to these schools, they found, so who do musical activities, were better able to discriminate different sounds, so musical sounds or any sounds. So I could maybe stamp my feet or clap my hands, and which is it? If you listen to the sound, is it stamping or clapping? So they were better able to tell the difference between sounds. This seems quite obvious because you're teaching music. Music is sound-based, and you're listening to different sounds all the time in music. You're doing high and low, different pitches. So musical activities help children to differentiate between sounds. This seems quite obvious. And then some more researchers here Slater, Straight, and others. They looked at speech in noise, perception of. So can children detect what is being said? Can they listen and focus on what is being said in a noisy environment? Well, they found that musicians are really good at this, so that children who have got musical training are better at detecting music sound in noise, speech in noise, which again seems quite logical because they're good with sound. So music is a really good thing for children to do, helps them to detect changes in sound and to listen to somebody speaking in a noisy environment. These researchers here, they said that children who are good at processing sounds are good at literacy. So these things are all related if you put them one after the other. Also, quite a long time ago now, Lamb and Gregory said that discrimination of musical sounds is related to reading performance. So this is to do with the sounds in language. So children who are good at detecting sounds and changes in sounds in music then become better at detecting changes in sounds in language. So music is helping because it helps children to tune in. So it helps them to tune in to differences in sound and also to speech in noise. So this is a list here of researchers who have said I've talked about how important language sound is to literacy and being able to tell the differences. So you can see how the music training can help. So I've put here, music training improves the awareness of sounds, and the awareness of sounds in language is vital to success in literacy. So music and language are very much related. Let's have a look at how we receive sound. So we've mentioned that sound is received through our ears. This is our hearing organ, if you like. This is how we usually hear anything. If we cover our ears, we can't hear. However, we also receive sound through vibration. So we can feel sound. So children who can't hear can still detect sound through vibration. And then this lady, Angela Miller, has also talked about a different way of receiving sound, which is through the air, not through a vibration, through something else like a table or a chair or the floor, but just through the air. And she found that when there is a sound, a person's face actually has very small movements in response to the sound that's going on around them. So there are actually 3 ways of receiving sound. So how do we feel about this sound? How is sound perceived? Are we happy with sound? What sounds make us happy? So when we perceive a sound, it means how we think and feel about that sound, what it makes us do. So this little diagram here gives an example. Psychoacoustic means, it's a psychological term, and it means how we not relate to sound, how we respond to sound. Okay, what movements we make in response to sound. So we hear a sound, the sound travels to your brain. Maybe it's the sound of a tiger. So our brain says, run away, run away. It's a scary sound. Maybe it's a soft, soothing sound, and it tells your brain, go to sleep. So how we perceive sound affects our body, affects our mind, affects what we're thinking about. Sometimes a song can make you think about a place that you've been, take you back in time. Sound music can be rousing, it can be quiet, it can be sleepy, it can be romantic. So sound can make you feel different things. What people say, the words they use. So here we've got, when we're thinking about children, movement helps to consolidate language sounds. So that I have a song, if you see a puddle, you have to go. splash, and the children jump in response to the picture of the child jumping in a puddle, and the sound, if you see a puddle, you have to go splash, so they splash. That's called onomatopoeia, the use of words that sound like the word that they are, like splash, crash. And then also we've got prosody of music and in language. So we've got intonation and tone and stress in music as well as in language. So these two things are very much intertwined. So how music affects our emotions, how words can affect our emotions. So I've got an example here of a minor and a major key. Why does a song in a minor key sound sad? It has smaller gaps, smaller intervals between the notes, the sounds. Why does that make a sad sound? It's how it makes us feel. And metaphoric use of language. So we say things like, oh, it's music to my ears. So we can use different language sounds and different words to make us feel happy, sad. So whatever we're listening to, whether it's somebody's voice, whether it's music, whether it's somebody being cross, whether it's somebody using nice words to us, then whatever we hear, the sounds that come in, have an effect upon our bodies and our minds and how we feel. Think about this when you're speaking to your children. Maybe if you shout, maybe they shut off and they're not listening. So discrimination of sound, this is the same box from the diagram. And there's just a little question. Do you think it's possible, therefore, to assume that an ability to discriminate musical sounds is a transferable skill to language? So do you think this is true? If children undertake musical activities and get good at listening to sounds, sound and speech in noise, do you think this will help them with language and ultimately with literacy? I'm asking you to think about it. I think definitely yes. So it's a question for you to ponder in your own time. So music and language, we've said they're interrelated, very, very similar. We can say they're both languages. Here are some of the similarities between them. We receive both of them through sound waves, through vibration, through our ears. We produce sounds, so musical sounds and language sounds. And if you were with us last week, you'll remember I mentioned the German lady, Daniela Samler, in 2010, who found that a song with music and words is processed in the brain and then divides into language and music sound. So we receive sounds and produce them both in music and in language. They both have prosody, so they both have stress, intonation. They both have rhythm, do-do, do-do, do-do. Like they both have a written form. They both have emotional effects. So the words that are spoken to you or different types of music can affect how you're feeling. They both communicate, used for communication. They both have phrasing. They both have structure. They both have sequence and prediction. We can go back to looking at the cognitive skills again there. They both require memory. They both have pattern. They require automaticity. They require paying attention. And maybe they both require comprehension. So very closely related. You can see how they work together. So back to listening skills then. Children need to be able to discriminate between sounds in language in order to become literate. So maybe discrimination of musical sounds can help. So what can we do? Well, we can have instruments. We can use instruments for singing songs and rhymes. Look at different types of instruments. Instruments don't have to be bought ones. You can have coconut shells here. You can have instruments that make a particular sound. We've got here a rainmaker. If you had a longer rainmaker, it would make sounds for a longer period of time. We have instruments that sound like a train. I like that one of my favourite. Or you can have like more normal instruments and just play along to various songs. So, for example, Cobbler Cobbler, Mend My Shoe, we had last week. Or I Hear Thunder, so you can hear the difference between loud sounds and quiet sounds. So, for example, I hear thunder, I hear thunder, hark don't you, hark don't you. And then quietly, you can even have the rainmaker. Pitter patter raindrops, pitter patter raindrops, I'm wet through, so are you. So it's very quiet. So it goes from very loud to very quiet. Can the children tell the difference? Can they sing very loudly and make loud noises, and sing very quietly and make quiet noises? Okay, this is the first step in discriminating between sounds. So using instruments, singing songs, we sang and used an instrument there. And you can use body sounds. So we've obviously got clapping, stamping, clicking, whistling. How many other sounds, body sounds, can you think of? That's quite a nice exercise with children. How many different sounds can you make? Maybe start with 10. I think that would be easy enough. If not, start with 5. How many different sounds can you make between you? It would be fun. Take turns making different body sounds. People can do that with I can't do that. People can do this and do that bits as well. I can't do that either. Some people can. Discriminating language sounds. We've said how important this is. Now, can you remember? These are syllables, rhymes, and phonemes. What was the overall term for these 3? An awareness of sounds in words. Can you remember what we called it? Sound, phono, and the spoken word, logo. Phonological awareness. Phonological awareness, the awareness of sounds in words. And children need to know these and be able to notice the difference in sounds at 3 different levels: syllables, rhymes, and phonemes. We'll spend more time on that later. So focusing on language sounds, we've talked about music being very beneficial. There is a mountain of research saying that musical activities help children with literacy. But there's no causal research, because teaching a child to play the piano doesn't teach them to read and write. It's not the same thing. But there's a lot of correlational research which says one helps the other, and we can see why, because the skills that you develop through musical activities are the same skills that you need for reading and writing, other than, of course, learning about the letters. So lots of places, lots of preschools have said and councils, for example, Aberdeenshire Council put in a lot of Kodai sessions. So they funded Kodai instructors, which is a musical method, if you like, of teaching children about music. And so they funded these and said, this is what will help children to become more literate. So we will put these in the counties. We'll pay people to go around the schools and do these musical sessions with children. So it helps. So the research says, yes, a lot, these skills will help the children, but it doesn't teach them to read and write. Okay, so it's something that helps, that's all. It's not the only thing. However, they do not teach children to read and write. Please think of why not. I'll go away again. See if you can write down some reasons why putting these musical, there's so much research that says music helps. But why not? Why is it not the same? I'll go away for a very short time. I'll be back while you write it down, okay? Okay, what did you write down? So this is what I've written. Musical sounds are not language sounds. Obviously, they're different. And music does not map language sounds to letters. So although these skills are helpful, they don't teach reading and writing. So they cannot be a causal relationship between music and literacy. However, there is a correlational relationship. Music does train children to attend to sound. So it helps children to listen, to focus and sound discrimination, the two indicators of literacy success. So we do need these skills. We need the listening skills and the focus and the paying attention. We need these skills for literacy, and musical activities can help children to gain these skills. So what can you do? Let's have a look. What about listening walks? Have you ever been on a listening walk with your child? So you're not allowed to speak, no speaking. You can take a pen and paper. The child can draw pictures of things as they walk, if you like. You can take pen and paper and write if you want. You can do pictures yourself. So you go for a little walk. You can go outside. You can go around your building. Anywhere you're like, quite short. And listen to the sounds that you hear. So you might hear a door opening, or you might hear a fridge going and then stopping like they do sometimes. You might hear the washing machine, birds singing outside. No end to things. You might hear somebody walking past, children in the street, some music playing. So this helps children to focus and actually listen to things that are going on around them, which otherwise they might not pay attention to. It's a nice idea, nice little thing to do together. What else can you do? Read stories. Absolutely. You can't read enough stories. I've got here Grandma's Magical Story Time. I don't know if any of you are grandparents out there. Look at all the wonderful stories you can read, like Jack and the Beanstalk, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, lots of modern stories, Velveteen Rabbit. There's no end to the number of books and stories that you can read. It's so important to read stories to children, not just let them watch stories on TV, because they're different, they're not narrated. So again, my favourite book is here, look, Tiger Who Came to Tea, because there's lots to talk about. What if a tiger came to your house for tea? There's also, we've got musical stories. I haven't got musical stories. I've got a book here called Sing Me a Story. And there's musical stories. So we've got Humpty Dumpty, Hickory Dickory Dock. And these songs actually tell a story. So spend time with your children with the story, saying, what happened in this story? You're singing the story. It's not just a song, something happened. Relate the story. What was the sequence? What was the beginning, the middle? What happened at the end? Can you change the ending? Change the story, change the song. Playing instruments together. So if I make this sound, can you identify what my instrument is made of? What do you think it's made of? Or this one? How is this different sound? Are they made of different materials? So once children get used to, obviously this is my frog and a triangle. If children get used to listening to different sounds and associating them with different materials, different instruments, different names, then they'll be able to recognize these sounds. You're teaching children to listen and focus on sounds. How about why is this so different? A different sound here. It's a much harsher sound. This is made of plastic. Very different to a sound made of wood. Like this one. Did you remember the name of this from last week? It's got 8 little pieces of wood called an octochime. A different sound. What about if you use the wooden beater on the plastic? It's still quite a harsh sound, that sound, isn't it? You could talk about why, if you're into science. and the difference in vibration makes different sounds. You could talk about maybe why the skin of a drum makes a sound for a longer period of time. If you have a cymbal, you can hit the cymbal, see how long your child can walk before they don't hear that vibration anymore. Then you could talk about, are they hearing the vibration or feeling it? Lots of different things you can do. Singing songs, reciting rhymes. There's so many of those. Please go on my Sounds and Symbols Facebook page. I've made 4 videos of 30 minutes each. They're on YouTube, but you can find them on the Sounds and Symbols Facebook page as well. Just sit, play them, listen, join in. There's instructions on the video. It's very, very easy. Make shakers. I used to have, what do you call them? The film in, I can't think of the cameras now. The film in the camera, I'm going like this because it went round. The little boxes that you kept camera film in, they were little cylinders, very small, black plastic cylinders. And I had a lot of those, which were great. I don't know if you can find something similar. And because they were black, you couldn't see what was inside them. So I put them in, I made them in pairs. So I put maybe dried peas, lentils, cocktail sticks, anything I could find, little buttons, but the same things in 2. And I had about 20, I think. And then children had to match them in pairs. Quite difficult. And you need to stop children trying to open them and see what's inside. It's tempting. But that was really good. It's a really good listening activity. It was quite difficult for myself as well, and I knew because I put them in. I'd be surprised how difficult it is. And then, did you watch the video that I asked you to watch, please, in the email that we sent? So the activity was, can you walk on tiptoe? And it went, can you walk on tiptoe as softly as a cat? Can you stamp along the road? Stamp, stamp, just like that. Can you take great big strides, just like a giant can? Or walk ever so slowly, like a little bent old man. So you see the difference in the words there. So we had tiptoeing very quietly, and then stomping very loudly, and then elongated these words to play with the words. Great big strides, or long strides, like a giant, or very slowly. So the rhyme goes much slower. Slowly, like a little bent old man. So you're adding on these adjectives. Little, bent, old man, to create this picture of this little man who's maybe walking along with his walking stick. So the children again have to listen very carefully to these words, and you want them to learn the rhyme and memorize it. So then they're using language and they're thinking about the pictures that this language conjures up, because they're listening carefully. And then also they're moving in time to the language as well, which consolidates learning. Okay, so I hope you've had quite a bit of information there and learnt quite a bit. Quite a lot for you to think about today. Let's have a look at what we've done. So we're difference between hearing and listening. So we want children to have what we might call it focused listening. I would maybe call it focused listening, where you know that a child is listening when you're speaking. Otherwise, there's no point you speaking if they're not listening. We looked at this term speech in noise, which is something important that children can do. Can you focus upon something that somebody is saying while there's a lot of noise going on around you? And then we looked at reception and perception of sound. So how we receive sound, there were 3 ways, do you remember? And then how we perceive it, how it makes us feel, how it makes us behave. And then sound discrimination, so being able to tell the differences between sounds. If you can do that with musical sounds, that then helps you to be able to do that with language sounds, which is a very important skill for literacy. And then we looked at a range of activities. We did other activities throughout the session as well. So I hope very much that you've enjoyed today. We're 10 minutes over as usual. At least you gave more for your money. So thank you very much for joining me again today. It's wonderful. And please join us again next week. So next week we're looking at language skills, how children learn language, spoken language. It's an innate skill, it's natural. But what can you do to promote it? We want children to be little chatterboxes. When they can't speak, you want them to speak. And sometimes when they speak, you wish they'd just be quiet. Stop asking why. So we're going to look at the development of spoken language next week and what you can do to promote this and help your child to become a very good speaker, because literacy is based upon spoken language. Okay. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you. Goodbye for now.